Hi, my name's Alex. I'm 25, single, mildly sarcastic, and I work as a stylist in a high-end bridal salon downtown. Now, before this story spirals out of control, and trust me, it will, you need to understand one thing. I didn't plan any of this. I wasn't trying to be dramatic or romantic or even particularly helpful. I was just doing my job. It started on a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that's so normal you barely remember it even happened. I wasn't even supposed to be at work. I'd swapped shifts to cover for Mia, who had a dentist appointment or a date or something involving both numbness and regret. So there I was, standing behind the front counter, sipping burnt coffee and adjusting a tiara on a mannequin, when our receptionist, Dana, came flying out of the back like the building was on fire. "Alex, emergency!" she hissed, whisper yelling the way only Dana could. I blinked. "Is someone bleeding?" "Worse," she said. "One bride canceled. The other one is stuck in traffic and won't make her fitting. But, good news, the new designer sent over that custom gown we've been waiting on, and we need a photo of it. Today, for the Instagram." I stared at her. "And this affects me how?" She gave me a look. "Because you, my darling friend, are the only one here who's sample size." I backed away slowly. "Dana." "No." "Alex." "Yes." Before I could protest, she was already pulling the dress from its protective bag. It shimmered like a dream. Layers of silk, lace, and economic anxiety. "Just try it on," she said. "One quick photo. No one will ever know." And that, my friends, was the moment everything began to unravel. I should have run. I should have faked an injury, pretended I was allergic to tulle, anything, but instead I sighed and muttered, "Fine. One picture. No full-length shots." Dana grinned like she just won the lottery. "You're the best." 15 minutes later, I was in the fitting room, half undressed, staring at my reflection as I carefully stepped into the gown. It slid on like it was made for me. I mean, objectively, I looked incredible. The bodice hugged in all the right places, the skirt flared like a cloud, and the neckline? Let's just say, if I ever had to marry myself, this would be the dress. "I hate how good this looks," I called out through the curtain. "I know," Dana yelled back. "Just wait till you see it with a veil." "No veil," I said, but it was too late. She flung open the curtain like a proud stage mom and gasped. "Alex, you're a vision. I'm a hostage in organza." "Just stand still," she said, already snapping photos on her phone. "This lighting is chef's kiss." I was halfway through striking a reluctant pose when the front door slammed open. A gust of wind and high heels thundered in, followed by the most dramatic voice I'd heard all month. "There she is. Oh, thank God. We've been looking everywhere." I turned slowly. A woman in a power suit and a cloud of perfume stood frozen in the entryway, staring directly at me. Then she clutched her chest and said, with full sincerity, "Ashley, sweetie, you look beautiful." I blinked. Dana blinked. The woman rushed forward, tears in her eyes. "We were so worried you'd change your mind. But look at you, radiant as ever." She hugged me before I could dodge. I think you got the wrong." "No time, sweetheart," she said. "Everyone's waiting." "Waiting where exactly?" And why was she dragging me toward the door? I should have screamed. I should have ripped the dress off and made a run for it like a runaway bride on caffeine. But instead, I stood there, stunned, silent, confused, and let this mysterious, terrifyingly efficient woman yank me out the salon door. "Ashley, you're trembling," she said. "Oh, sweetie, cold feet are normal. But don't you dare back out now. Daniel is head over heels. And your father would kill me if this wedding fell apart, because you had a moment." "Daniel? My father?" What was happening? Dana was still standing in the doorway, mouth open, phone raised, clearly debating whether to call the cops or just keep recording. "Dana," I said, reaching out helplessly. She waved and smiled. Smiled. "Go with it," she mouthed. "This is gold." Gold. Suddenly, I was in a sleek black limo. Someone handed me a mimosa. Someone else shoved a makeup brush in my face. Two women I didn't recognize squealed about my skin tone and began arguing about lipstick shades. "I'm not," I tried. "Shoo," one of them said. "Just breathe. You're glowing." "I'm not Ashley." They laughed. "Classic Ashley," said the one with the contour palette. "Always cracking jokes." I stared at the bouquet that had somehow materialized in my hands. Soft pink roses, delicate ribbon, very bridal. Somewhere in the chaos, I caught my reflection in the limo window. Veil, curls, flawless foundation, a dress that fit like a daydream. I didn't look like Alex, the bridal stylist, anymore. I looked like Ashley, whoever she was. And I had a horrible, sinking feeling that wherever she was supposed to be right now wasn't not in this limo. The limo was gliding through the city like some surreal dream sequence in a rom-com gone wrong. Across from me sat the woman who'd abducted me, with a smile on her face and the energy of a wedding planner on her fifth espresso. She hadn't stopped talking since we pulled away from the salon. "Okay, so we're arriving a little behind schedule," she said, checking her phone. "But no worries, they've delayed the ceremony by 20 minutes. Your cousin Jenna broke a heel, so honestly, thank God." I opened my mouth. No, she said, holding up a manicured hand. "Don't thank me. Thank the universe. Or your skincare routine. Because wow, Ashley, that glow." "I'm not." I tried again. "Save it for the vows." She winked. I looked around the limo, like maybe someone else would speak up. A voice of reason. A reality check. A crew member from a hidden camera show. But all I saw were smiling strangers in coordinated pastels, sipping champagne and snapping selfies with me in the background. "Okay, Ashley, tell us," one of them said. "Are you ready to be Mrs. Daniel Grayson?" "Who?" "I don't even know a Daniel," I blurted. They gasped. "You're so funny." "She's just nervous," someone whispered. I slumped into the seat and stared out the window. Billboards. Buses. A guy in a Pikachu costume dancing on the sidewalk. Normal things. But here I was, dressed as a bride, in a limo, with a bouquet I didn't ask for, being called a name that definitely wasn't mine. I reached into the folds of the gown for my phone. It was gone. Of course. "Where's my—" "Oh, you mean this?" One of the pastel bridesmaids held it up. "We got it safe. No doom scrolling before your big moment." She dropped it into her designer clutch with a wink. I was trapped. In satin. In a lie. In a limo heading straight for what sounded dangerously like a real wedding. The limo turned into a long driveway lined with fairy lights, flower arches, and guests. So many guests. I pressed my face against the window, heart pounding. "This is a mistake," I whispered. "This is a full-blown wedding." "Oh, Ashley," the woman across from me said, touching my arm gently. "I know you're anxious, but we talked about this. It's completely normal to freak out a little." "This isn't a freak out," I said. "This is identity theft." "I'm not." The door opened. A hand reached in. "Let's go, sweetheart." And just like that, I was being pulled out of the limo into the golden afternoon sunlight, with a dozen people clapping like I just won an Olympic medal in bridal excellence. Cameras flashed. A little girl threw petals at me. A man with a headset whispered, "Walk slow, wait for the cue, then head down the aisle. Bride number 2, you're on in 4 minutes." Bride number what? I tried to turn around, to say something, anything, but every time I opened my mouth, someone shoved flowers at me, adjusted my veil, or dabbed powder on my nose. People cried. People hugged me. Someone shouted, "Ashley, your grandfather made it." "Grandpa." I was ushered into a small room filled with mirrors, flowers, and an unnerving amount of tissues. I caught my reflection again. A full bridal vision. Veil, blush, bouquet, panic. There was a knock at the door. 2 minutes, Ashley." I looked around the room for a window, an escape hatch, teleportation button. Nothing. I grabbed the hem of the dress and ran to the door, flinging it open. "Listen," I said to the poor guy standing outside. "I'm not Ashley. My name is Alex. I'm a stylist. I work at La Belle Bridal Boutique, and I was just trying on a dress for a stupid photo when—" He blinked. "You're hilarious," he said. "Daniel's going to lose it when he sees you." And before I could scream, he guided me toward the double doors. The music swelled. People stood. The doors opened. And Alex, stepped onto the aisle, heading straight toward the altar. My feet moved, but my brain was in open revolt. "Turn around," it screamed. Swan dive into a hedge. Fake a seizure. Something. But no. There I was floating down the aisle like a bridal hallucination, clutching my bouquet so hard the stems were leaving dents in my palms. People were smiling. Some were crying. Phones were everywhere. This wasn't a wedding. This was evidence. The music swelled, some romantic piano version of a pop song I normally hate, but right now, it was the soundtrack to my slow, accidental descent into madness. At the end of the aisle stood a man. Tall, dark suit, tie slightly crooked, like he'd tried to fix it himself last minute. He was handsome in that brooding lead in a romantic drama kind of way, except his brow was furrowed like he was seeing something off. Like maybe his bride looked a little too much like a mildly confused man named Alex in full makeup. Our eyes met. He tilted his head. I did the only thing I could think of. I smiled nervously and mouthed help. He blinked, then smiled back. Wide, forced. The smile of a man who is either playing along or deeply reconsidering his life choices. I reached the altar. He took my hand. It was warm, steady, and trembling just enough to match my energy. "You're not Ashley," he whispered under his breath. Finally, I hissed. "Thank you. I've been saying that for the last 20 minutes. Who are you?" "I don't know anymore." A polite throat clear silenced us. The officiant smiled brightly. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today." Oh God, it was really happening. I looked around, desperately scanning the crowd. Any sign of someone about to shout stop, or fraud, or that's a dude in a dress. But nope, just tearful aunties, phone cameras, and a flower girl picking her nose. "I can't do this," I muttered. "Too late," Daniel whispered. "We're already trending." "Do you, Ashley?" "I'm not Ashley," I muttered under my breath for the 1,000th time, now a full-blown mantra. The officiant droned on, smiling, probably thinking my twitching eye and panicked energy was just emotional bride vibes. I kept waiting for someone, anyone, to notice. A cousin, a childhood best friend, the actual groom. But no, apparently, all it takes to fool 150 guests is a dress, a veil, and commitment-level confusion. Daniel, if that was his name, was still gripping my hand. "You're sweating," he whispered. "I'm trying not to faint," I whispered back. Same. From the pews, people were filming. One woman dabbed her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Another mouthed, "You look stunning." A kid in the second row yawned. This was absurd. And then, just as the officiant reached the line, "Do you take this man?" there was a slam. The chapel doors flew open. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. And there she was, Ashley. Messy ponytail, bright pink hoodie, leggings, sneakers, one AirPod in, holding a Starbucks iced coffee like it was a weapon. Her eyes locked on me, in her dress, at her wedding. She dropped her drink. Then she screamed, "Who the hell is in my gown?" You could feel the sound hit the back wall. Every single guest turned toward me in synchronized horror. Someone screamed. Someone else dropped a phone. The flower girl started crying. I slowly looked at Daniel, who looked like a man watching a building collapse in slow motion. I opened my mouth, said the only thing I could. "It's a long story." Silence. Like church-level silence. Fitting, considering we were in one. Ashley stormed down the aisle like a bridesmaid possessed. People parted like the Red Sea. Her sneakers squeaked ominously with each furious step. "Oh," she said, pointing at me like I keyed her car. "Yes, that." Daniel, to his credit, tried to step forward. "Ash, wait." She shoved past him, came nose to nose with me, and yanked off my veil. Gasps. So many gasps. One woman literally clutched her pearls. Ashley squinted. "Are you wearing highlighter?" I blinked. "Fenny. Shade. Trophy wife." Unbelievable. She turned to Daniel. "You hired a replacement bride?" "What?" he said, clearly as lost as I was. "I didn't do anything. I thought you ghosted." "Ghosted?" she shrieked. "I went to get coffee. You were gone for an hour. I had to wait for my mobile order." They both looked at me. Daniel, confused. Ashley, furious. Me, emotionally and spiritually dissociating in couture. "Okay," I said. "Can I just clarify something? I'm not Ashley. My name is Alex. I'm a stylist. I work at La Belle Bridal. I tried on this dress for a photo, and then this terrifyingly organized woman shoved me into a limo, and everyone kept calling me Ashley, and there was champagne and a bouquet. And then, well, this." The chapel stayed dead quiet. A cough echoed from the back row. Ashley stared at me. Then she blinked, took a long, deep breath, and said, "You tried on my custom gown?" I froze, and that's when she lunged. Daniel caught her midair. "I will rip the seams out myself." "Ash, please," Daniel yelled, trying to hold her back. This was supposed to be my day. "Technically," I said weakly, "it still kind of is." "Shut up, fake bride." A photographer in the back snapped a shot. I saw the flash. That image was definitely going viral. If there's one thing I've learned from this experience, it's that chaos has tears. And I had just unlocked the final boss level. Ashley was still restrained by two bridesmaids and her very brave cousin, shouting about legal action, dry cleaning bills, and emotional terrorism. The officiant stood frozen mid-sentence, clutching his little book like it might save his soul. Meanwhile, I was still at the altar, still in the dress, still clutching the bouquet of lies. Daniel turned to me. "So," he said carefully, "you're really not Ashley?" I looked at him. "Unless I've had a head injury and a personality transplant, no." He gave a long, slow exhale, then, "God help him," he laughed. Like a real full laugh. Hands on knees, wedding crashing hysterics kind of laugh. "This is insane," he said between gasps. "You think you're confused?" I said. I was supposed to post one Instagram photo today. That was it. More laughter. From the guests this time. Apparently, the situation had crossed from horror to absurdity to pure entertainment. I heard someone whisper, "Best wedding I've ever been to." Another guest shouted, "Let them finish the ceremony." "Are you kidding me?" Ashley shrieked from the back. "Honestly," Daniel said, wiping a tear from his eye, "this might be the most honest relationship I've ever had. We haven't even been introduced, and already you've shown up, lied unintentionally, and stolen my spotlight. That's oddly impressive." I smirked despite myself. "So what now?" He looked around the room, shrugged, and said, "I mean, we're both here. We're dressed. Vows." There was a wave of gasps. Even the organist raised an eyebrow. "You can't be serious," I said, trying not to laugh. Daniel leaned in. "If you say yes, my mother might actually faint. That alone might be worth it." And for one wild second, just one, I actually considered it. The accidental vows. The chaos wedding. The viral moment of a century. But before I could even think about answering, Ashley broke free. "Oh no. No," she screamed, charging down the aisle again. "There will be no fake vows at my wedding." I did what any sensible person in a fitted gown and heels would do. I ran. Let me tell you something about running in a wedding dress. Don't. It's like trying to sprint through a marshmallow with a parachute strapped to your hips. I made about 5 steps down the aisle before I tripped over the hem and crashed into a decorative column covered in fake wisteria. The whole thing came down in a crunch of styrofoam and silk. Ashley, hot on my heels, shrieked like she'd witnessed a war crime. "My flowers!" Guests leapt to their feet. Some tried to help. Most just filmed. I was on the floor, gasping, veil on my face, bouquet flung halfway across the church. And then, suddenly, a hand appeared. Daniel, still at the altar, still dressed like he hadn't just watched his real bride attempt a flying tackle. "You okay?" he asked, almost smiling. "Physically? Yes. Emotionally? I'm filing a restraining order against Lace." He pulled me up, brushing wisteria petals off my shoulder. Ashley was now in full meltdown mode. She paced in circles, waving her arms, raving about betrayal and lawsuits, and how this is just like prom all over again. "I was gone for 30 minutes, she yelled. "You never told anyone you were leaving," someone from her bridal party shouted back. "Because I needed to breathe." "And a caramel macchiato," I added under my breath. She spun toward me. "Oh, shut up, you walking Pinterest board." I raised my hands. "Look, I didn't want to be here. I was kidnapped by Tool." Daniel cleared his throat. "Okay, everyone," he said with surprising authority. "Let's take a breath. This wedding is officially canceled. All right? We're done. Go home. Eat the cake. Post your photos. Try therapy." Ashley froze. "You're canceling it? Just like that?" "I mean, technically," he said, glancing at me, "you were late. And replaced." I winced. "Sorry." He shrugged. "Honestly, it was kind of an upgrade." "Ouch." Ashley screamed, threw her AirPod at him, missed, and stormed out again, this time with 3 bridesmaids chasing her and 1 grandma sobbing. She always ruins her own parties. And just like that, the crowd slowly began to disperse. Someone turned off the organ music. A guy in a bow tie passed out cake boxes. And I stood there, still in the gown, surrounded by the crumbling remains of what was supposed to be a perfect day for someone else. Daniel stood next to me. "You sure you're not an actor?" he asked. That was the most entertaining hour of my life. "Pretty sure," I said. "But thanks." He grinned. "So, want to get out of here?" I looked down at my dress, then back at him. "As long as I don't have to marry anyone on the way out." "Deal." By the time I got back to my apartment, still in the gown, heels in hand, veil draped over my shoulder like a war trophy, I had 37 unread messages, 16 missed calls, and a text from Dana that just said, "You're on TikTok. Don't panic." Too late. I flopped onto my couch, opened Instagram, and was greeted by the first tag. Movie camera. When the stylist becomes the bride, face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy, face with tears of joy, hashtag accidental bride, hashtag wedding gone wrong. I clicked. There I was, walking the aisle, fake smiling, bouquet clenched in terror. Then cut to Ashley bursting through the doors like a caffeinated banshee. Cue dramatic zoom. Cue sound effects. Cue millions of views. Millions. I flipped to TikTok. It was worse. Clips from a dozen different angles. Slowed down videos. Voiceovers. Reenactments. Reaction memes. A dance challenge to the audio of me saying it's a long story. Hashtag accidental bride was trending worldwide. One comment read, "Not Ashley getting Starbucks while man in Finney takes her vows skull, skull, skull." Another, "Plot twist. They actually fall in love and get married for real." I laughed. Like Weez laughed. Then curled up under a blanket and muttered, "I need a lobotomy." My phone buzzed again. Daniel Grayson tagged you in a post. I froze. Opened it. It was a selfie, him, still in his suit, me blurry in the background, eating a cake pop in full wedding drag. Caption, "So weirdest day of my life. But 10 out of 10 would accidentally get fake married again." Grinning face with sweat ring. I stared at it. Then, at his profile. Verified. Over 100K followers. Of course. And now, I was in his grid, immortalized as the dude who wore his fiancée's dress, walked down the aisle, and kind of stole the show. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or hire a publicist. Instead, I just typed one word under his post. Same. 2 hours after Daniel's post went up, my phone buzzed again. And again. And again. I was now at 9,000 new followers. My DMs? A fever dream. Messages like, "Are you single? Do you do drag weddings? Please tell me this is a rom-com promo. We need a Netflix series." Now, I had to mute notifications just to breathe. That's when I saw it. A DM from Daniel Grayson. I stared at it for a solid minute before opening it like it might explode. "Daniel, hey, you okay? You disappeared pretty fast." Not that I blame you. I stared, then typed, "Alex, still emotionally trapped in lace, but otherwise surviving." He replied instantly, "Daniel, good. Also, you were amazing. Like, Oscar-worthy panic performance." "Alex, thanks. I was going for gay deer in headlights." "Daniel, nailed it." I grinned despite myself. Then came the real message. "Daniel, so, I know today was a disaster for some people, but weirdly, I haven't laughed that hard in a year. Would you want to grab coffee sometime? As yourself this time. No dress required. Unless it's your thing. I don't judge." I stared at the message like it was in another language. "Coffee. With the almost groom." I hesitated, then typed back, "Alex, only if I get to pick the Starbucks this time." "Daniel, deal. I'll even make sure no one mistakes you for a bride this time." "Alex, I don't know. Being a viral wedding icon is kind of addictive." "Daniel, careful. You're one veil away from a sponsorship deal." I chuckled. For real this time. Somewhere in the chaos between the Tool and the TikToks, I'd become a walking meme, a trending tag, and maybe, just maybe, someone with a second chance at something entirely unplanned. 3 days later, I stood in front of a tiny coffee shop that was very deliberately not a Starbucks. It was quiet, cozy, string lights in the window. Zero chance of surprise wedding. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. Daniel was already there, jeans, leather jacket, no altar in sight. He looked up from his drink and smiled like this was totally normal. "Hey, you're not wearing a veil," he said. "Not even a tiara," I replied. "Disappointing, I know." We sat, and for the first time since the incident, we talked like regular humans. No organ music, no cameras, no bouquet acting as a stress ball. "So," he said, stirring his coffee, "have you recovered from your brief career as a bride?" "Barely. I'm still finding sequins in places sequins should not be." He laughed. "I have to admit, I didn't expect my wedding to turn into a viral content generator." "Yeah, you really dodged a lifetime of chaos with that one." He raised an eyebrow. "I don't know. Your chaos was kind of fun." I tried to hide my smile by sipping my drink. "So what happened after I ran for my life?" I asked. He leaned back. "Ashley tried to salvage the reception. Ate 3 slices of cake. Told people it was performance art. That honestly tracks. We haven't really talked since. She unfollowed me and blocked me on Pinterest." "Oof. Brutal." He shrugged. "I think it was doomed before the cake. You just happened to make it very clear." We sat in a moment of quiet, letting the absurdity settle like foam in our lattes. Then he said, "You know, for someone who was kidnapped by Tool, you handled it pretty well." "Thanks." I'm adding survived a wedding I wasn't invited to my resume. "You should," he said, right under accidental internet icon. "Oh, I plan to monetize this disaster. Merch is coming." He laughed again, then leaned in just a little. "I'm glad you said yes." "To coffee." I smiled. "Me too." He hesitated, then asked, "So, what happens now?" I tilted my head. "Well," I said, "normally I'd say let's take it slow, but considering you've already seen me in a dress, held my hand at the altar, and watched me faceplant into a flower column, I feel like we're already emotionally married." He grinned. "Fair point. The strange thing about going viral is how fast the world moves on, but your life doesn't." A week after the wedding, that wasn't. The internet had found a new distraction, something about a cat that plays piano and eats hot Cheetos. My face, thankfully, was no longer plastered across every wedding fail compilation. The chaos had quieted. Well, mostly. My boss gave me a paid week off with a note that said, "Rest up, icon, but maybe stick to tuxes next time." Face-blowing kiss. Dana printed my viral photo and framed it in the break room under a hand-lettered sign. "In case of emergency, send Alex." My inbox. Still wild. A reality show pitch. A podcast invite. One brand offered me a lifetime supply of under-eye concealer for surviving public stress. But outside all the buzz, something else was happening. Something real. Daniel and I started seeing each other. Quiet coffee dates. Walks. Texts that turned into calls. Jokes that turned into conversations that turned into something kind. No pressure. No organ music. No accidentally exchanged vows. Just 2 people who met in the weirdest possible way. And somehow clicked anyway. One night, we were sitting on his couch, watching a rom-com that felt suspiciously close to our own story. He turned to me and said, "You know, if you ever write about this, no one's going to believe it." I grinned. "That's okay. It's not for them. It's for me." "Still," he said, "if you do write it, make sure you tell them I was very charming. You were kidnapped into a wedding and laughed through it." "Exactly. Prince material." I nudged him with my shoulder. "You'll get an entire chapter." He smiled. And for once, there were no cameras. No dresses. No mistaking identities. Just me. Just him. And maybe, just maybe, the start of a different kind of fairy tale. It's funny how a single day can completely derail your life. Or maybe reroute it. I started this story thinking it was about a disaster, a fashion emergency gone nuclear. About a guy who accidentally ended up in a wedding dress and nearly got married to a stranger. But now I think it was just the beginning. People still ask me about that day. At work, online, at parties, when someone inevitably yells, "Tell them about the dress." And I do. I tell the story. Every ridiculous, impossible, glitter-covered moment. I tell them how I was shoved into a gown, mistaken for a bride, kidnapped in a limo, nearly married a stranger, and then, somehow, found something real in the wreckage. I tell them about Daniel, how he started as a punchline and somehow turned into a maybe. We're not rushing things. There's no aisle, no bouquet, no pressure. Just late-night texts, matching playlists, takeout sushi, inside jokes. He still teases me every time we pass a bridal shop. Need to pop in? Try on anything lately? And I always roll my eyes and say, not unless you're planning on fainting at the altar again. We laugh. It's easy now. No cameras, no drama, just us. Somewhere along the way, the viral fame faded. The likes stopped rolling in. The hashtags cooled. And I didn't mind, because this isn't a story about a wedding anymore. It's a story about the moment after. The moment where the chaos ends, the music stops, the dress comes off, and the real story finally begins.